The M1926 service uniform, the starting point. The standard uniform of the early 1940s came straight out of World War I. A wool olive drab tunic with a stiff standing collar, matching trousers, and a campaign hat that looked like it belonged in a 1917 photo. It was made for standing around bases and marching in parades, not for running across beaches or digging into frozen ground. The color was called olive drab, but that name covered a wide range of greens and browns depending on which factory made the uniform. Soldiers in the same unit often showed up wearing noticeably different shades. Nobody liked it, but nobody had time to deal with it yet. The M1937 field uniform, a step toward modernization. By 1937, the Army had made some updates. The stiff standing collar was swapped for an open collar with lapels. That sounds like a small thing, but it made a real difference. You could actually move and breathe in it. The fit was still loose, which was done on purpose to allow layering in cold weather. Officers wore rank on the collar. Enlisted men wore it on the lower sleeve. Unit patches went on the left shoulder. The system made sense at a base. In actual combat, it was going to need a serious rethink. The M1 helmet, the one thing they got right early. The helmet deserves its own moment because the timing here is important. The M1 was approved in June 1941 and started reaching troops before Pearl Harbor. It replaced the old Brodie helmet, a shallow steel bowl that America had borrowed from the British back in 1917. The M1 was a real step up. It sat deeper on the head, covered more of the skull, had a liner that could be worn on its own, and had a chin strap that actually kept it in place while running. It weighed just over 2 pounds. Soldiers wore it from North Africa all the way to the Japanese surrender in 1945 with almost no changes. In a story full of rushed fixes and compromises, the M1 helmet was the one thing the Army got nearly right the first time. The service shoe and legging problem. Below the waist, the early American soldier was dealing with one of the most hated pieces of gear in the entire war: canvas leggings. These were long strips of canvas that wrapped around the leg from ankle to knee, meant to keep mud and debris out of the boot. In theory, fine. In practice, they took 20 minutes to put on correctly, soaked through in the rain, and came unwrapped at the worst possible times. Every soldier who wore them despised them. The legging was not going to make it through the war. But in 1940 and 1941, every American soldier was still stuck with them. The M1941 field jacket, America's first real combat layer. The M1941 field jacket was designed by a major named Parsons and showed up just as the war was starting. It was a water-resistant cotton shell with a zipper up the front and 2 pockets. Light enough to wear over a shirt in mild weather or under a heavier coat when it got cold. Troops liked it right away. It was easier to move in than the wool tunic. It dried faster, and compared to everything that came before it, it felt modern. But combat quickly found its weak spot. It was not warm enough for real cold. In North Africa, that was fine. In the Aleutian Islands or the mountains of Italy, it was a serious problem. The M1941 was mostly phased out by 1943, but it set the direction for everything the Army designed after it. The HBT uniform, for heat, for work, for the Pacific. Herringbone twill, called HBT by everyone who wore it, became the main uniform fabric in the Pacific. It was a 2-piece cotton outfit and a diagonal weave. Lighter than wool, it handled tropical heat much better and could be washed in a stream and dried in a couple of hours. It started out as a work uniform, something for base details and maintenance jobs. But Pacific commanders quickly figured out it was actually better for jungle fighting than the standard wool uniform. By 1942, it was being worn as a frontline combat uniform across the Pacific, often with no rank or unit patches at all. When everyone is covered in mud and it is 90 degrees, badges stop feeling important. The M1943 uniform system, the Army tries to fix everything at once. By late 1943, the Army had 3 years of real combat experience to draw from. They used it to redesign the uniform from scratch. The result was the M1943 system, and the goal was simple: fix everything that the previous designs had gotten wrong. The main piece was the M1943 field jacket. Longer than the M1941, it reached down to the hip. It had a flap over the zipper to block wind, 2 large chest pockets, and 2 more pockets, lower down. It was built to be part of a layering system. Wear the wool shirt and trousers underneath. Add the overcoat on top when things got cold. One system for all temperatures and all places. The problem was timing. It arrived too late and in numbers too small to replace earlier uniforms before the biggest campaigns were already underway. But where it did reach soldiers, they responded well. The combat boot, killing the legging at last. The best thing to come out of the M1943 system was not even clothing. It was the combat boot. A tall leather boot that laced up past the ankle. It covered enough of the lower leg to make the canvas legging completely pointless. When these boots reached soldiers who had been wrapping canvas around their legs every morning since basic training, the response was instant. The leggings went into bags and never came back out. The combat boot stayed standard for the rest of the war. Airborne, the army within the army. Paratroopers could not use standard infantry gear. Jumping out of a low-flying aircraft into a defended area created problems that regular boots and trousers were never built to handle. The M1942 jumpsuit was built around those problems. Reinforced knees and seat, large cargo pockets on the thighs, one of the first times that design was used anywhere, and eventually the reason cargo pockets ended up on nearly every military uniform in the world. A zipper up the front instead of buttons, because buttons snag on equipment inside an aircraft during a jump, and a zipper does not. Airborne troops also got the M1942 jump boot, a tall, stiff leather boot with a buckled ankle strap. These boots became a major point of pride. Paratroopers were very protective of them and pushed back hard anytime someone suggested switching to the standard M1943 boot. Winter warfare and the bulge problem. December 1944, the Ardennes forest in Belgium. American soldiers were already under heavy pressure from a German offensive when the temperature dropped below freezing and held there. What happened next was one of the biggest supply failures of the entire American war effort. Soldiers did not have the right gear for that kind of cold. Wool overcoats soaked through in the wet snow, standard boots let in the cold and damp. Trench foot cases ran into the tens of thousands. The army moved fast to fix it. Extra boots were rushed to the front. Scarves and knit caps that had been sitting in supply storage were finally handed out. White bed sheets were passed around as makeshift snow camouflage because actual winter whites were not available in the numbers needed. The fixes were messy and thrown together, but they were enough to hold the line at Bastogne. Camouflage, America's complicated relationship with blending in. The Army spent the whole war unable to fully commit to camouflage. The Marine Corps adopted a 2-sided camouflage pattern in 1942 and used it across the Pacific. The Army tried its own version, issuing camouflage uniforms in small numbers during the Italian campaign in 1944. It did not go as planned. American soldiers in camouflage were sometimes shot at by other American soldiers who mistook them for German SS troops who wore a somewhat similar pattern. The camouflage uniforms were pulled back from most Army units, and the experiment was quietly dropped. For most of the war, Army soldiers fought in plain olive drab, while the argument about whether that was the right call continued well after 1945. Rank and insignia in combat. By 1944, showing rank at the front had become a dangerous habit. Officers who wore their rank where it could be seen were being picked off by snipers. The informal response, never quite official, was to stop displaying rank near the front line. Officers were addressed less formally. Saluting in combat zones was discouraged because it told anyone watching exactly who the important target was. The Army adjusted. The full rank system stayed on dress uniforms and at bases in the rear. At the front, staying alive quietly rewrote the rules without anyone having to put out an official order about it.